Jace, a human soldier, stood at the entrance of the grand arena, feeling the weight of the moment. He wasn't sure what he expected when he arrived on this alien world, but it certainly wasn't the grandeur that awaited him. The arena was massive, stretching high into the sky, with walls adorned with strange symbols and colors he couldn't understand. The air was thick with tension as the crowd of alien spectators waited in silence. The alien princess, Rila, sat high on her throne, her eyes scanning the arena with a cold, calculating gaze. She was known throughout the galaxy for her arrogance, her belief that her people were the strongest and most advanced in every way. Her reputation was built on that belief, and she carried it with pride. Jace couldn't help but feel small standing before her. His armor, though sturdy and practical, was a far cry from the sleek, advanced designs of the alien warriors surrounding him. It wasn't made of the high-tech alloys that his opponents wore, nor did it have the glowing enhancements that many of the alien species favored. It was human-made, simple but reliable. Yet, as he looked up at the princess, he could sense her dismissive attitude. Rila's lips curled into a smirk as she leaned forward, her voice echoing through the arena. "This is what passes for a warrior in your world," she scoffed, her words dripping with mockery. The alien crowd around her chuckled, and the sound stung Jace's pride. She was right, in a way. His armor didn't look as impressive as theirs. It wasn't shiny or sleek, but it had served him well in countless battles. He knew what it was capable of. He knew what he was capable of. Jace adjusted the straps on his shoulders, the weight of his armor feeling more like a challenge than a burden now. He could feel the eyes of the princess and the crowd on him, each of them judging him before he had even had a chance to prove himself. Despite the ridicule, Jace didn't falter. He knew that being human meant they had to work harder, think faster, and fight smarter than anyone else. They didn't have the luxuries of advanced technology that other species did, but that didn't mean they were weak. If anything, it made them stronger. His fingers tightened around the hilt of his sword. It wasn't made of rare metals or forged in the stars like the weapons of the aliens. It was simple, solid steel. But Jace trusted it. And more importantly, he trusted himself. He had come here for one reason: to show these aliens that humans weren't to be underestimated. As the horns blared, signaling the start of the battle, Jace's mind focused on the task at hand. He didn't care about the princess's insults. He didn't care about the size of the arena or the judgment in the eyes of the spectators. What mattered was that he was here, and he was going to prove to everyone, including Rila, that humans were stronger than they looked. With that thought, Jace stepped forward, into the center of the arena, ready to face whatever came next. The sound of the horns faded as the atmosphere in the arena shifted. The crowd fell into an eager silence, all eyes on the two combatants. On one side stood Jace, his feet planted firmly on the ground, his eyes locked onto his opponent. The alien champion, a towering warrior covered in gleaming armor, looked down at him with a mixture of amusement and disdain. Jace's grip tightened around his sword as he focused on his breathing. His heart beat faster, but he pushed the nervousness aside. The crowd was watching. The princess was watching. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was the fight ahead. The alien champion was a beast of a warrior, easily twice Jace's size, with muscles rippling under his armor. His weapon, a massive energy spear, hummed with power, crackling with the promise of destruction. The warrior stood tall, radiating confidence. His eyes never left Jace, sizing him up with a smug grin. "You're a brave human," the champion said in a deep, resonant voice. "But bravery alone won't save you." Jace didn't respond. He didn't need to. The words were meaningless. He had faced enemies far worse than this before. What mattered now was skill. And that was something he had in abundance. Without warning, the alien champion lunged forward, moving faster than Jace expected. The spear swung through the air, aiming straight for his chest. Jace dodged just in time, his body moving with a grace that surprised even him. He rolled to the side, barely avoiding the spear's tip, and sprang to his feet in one fluid motion. The crowd gasped in unison, clearly impressed by his agility. Even the princess, who had been so sure of the alien's victory, raised an eyebrow in surprise. The champion swung the spear again, this time faster, more vicious. Jace ducked low, feeling the heat of the weapon's energy as it passed inches above his head. He knew the alien's strength was something he couldn't match head-on, so he had to outthink him. He had to make every move count. Jace darted to the side and landed a quick strike on the champion's armored leg. The blow was minor, but it sent a message: "I'm not afraid of you." The alien champion let out a growl, clearly frustrated, and swung the spear downward in a wide arc. Jace was already in motion, rolling to the side, narrowly avoiding the deadly strike. He could feel the tension in the air. The aliens around him were starting to doubt their champion's victory. Princess Rila, perched high on her throne, leaned forward, her face a mixture of disbelief and fascination. She had expected a quick, one-sided victory for her champion. Humans were nothing more than inferior beings to her, nothing more than simple creatures who couldn't possibly stand up to the might of her warriors. But now she wasn't so sure. The human was proving more resilient than she had imagined. He wasn't just surviving. He was making the champion work for every strike. Jace didn't have the luxury of a fancy weapon or high-tech armor, but he had something the aliens didn't: human ingenuity. He was faster, more unpredictable, and above all, determined. The fight wasn't about strength. It was about outsmarting his opponent. With every dodge, every strike, Jace was gaining the upper hand. The champion's movements were starting to slow, his confidence beginning to waver. The crowd, once silent, began murmuring in disbelief. Was it possible? Could the human actually win? And then, for the first time, Jace saw it: a small opening. The alien champion had overextended himself. This was his chance. With a quick, calculated move, Jace lunged forward and struck. His blade didn't pierce the alien's armor, but it was enough to throw the champion off balance. The massive warrior staggered, his eyes wide with surprise. The crowd roared, and even Princess Rila couldn't hide the shock on her face. Jace stood tall, his breathing steady but his heart racing. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, the alien champion seemed uncertain. And that, to Jace, was a victory in itself. The battle raged on, the sounds of clashing metal and crackling energy filling the arena. Jace moved swiftly, his eyes sharp as he tracked the movements of his much larger opponent. Each time the alien champion swung his spear, Jace was there, narrowly avoiding the attack with a roll or a well-timed step to the side. The human's agility was his greatest advantage. But as the fight continued, Princess Rila grew more and more impatient. She watched from her high perch, her eyes narrowing with every movement Jace made. He was quick, yes, but to her, that didn't matter. Strength was what won battles, and Jace was nothing more than a mere human, small, weak, and fragile in comparison to the alien warriors that surrounded her. She had expected the fight to end quickly, a show of her champion's superiority. But here he was, still standing, still dodging, still defying her expectations. She couldn't help herself. A sneer curled on her lips, and she spoke out loud for the entire arena to hear. "Is this what passes for a warrior in your pathetic species?" Her voice rang out with a sharp edge of mockery. And the crowd, already uncertain about the outcome of the duel, let out a collective chuckle. The princess's words seemed to only fuel her champion's anger, but Jace, despite his exhaustion, didn't falter. The human stood tall, ignoring the princess's taunts, and refocused on the battle. His eyes darted over the alien warrior's form, looking for another opening. The champion, frustrated by his inability to land a blow, was starting to make mistakes. His movements were becoming more erratic. Jace saw this and seized the opportunity to strike again, landing a quick but effective blow to the alien's shoulder. The champion roared in frustration, stepping back and gripping his weapon tighter. The alien's frustration, however, seemed to have little effect on the princess. She remained seated, arms crossed, a look of clear disdain on her face as she watched the battle unfold. She was bored. Humans, to her, were nothing more than insects. What did it matter if one of them could fight? Their kind had no real power, no real purpose in the galaxy. The alien race she belonged to was far superior in every way, physically, technologically, and intellectually. But the longer she watched, the more her certainty began to waver. Jace wasn't backing down. His every movement, every strike, spoke of an unrelenting will to survive. There was something in his eyes, something that told her he wouldn't give up, no matter how hard the fight became. She wasn't used to seeing such determination in the humans she had come across before. Most of them were weak, easily intimidated, but not this one. For the first time, she felt a flicker of doubt. Could it be? Could this human actually defeat her champion? Her thoughts were interrupted as the alien champion swung his spear once again. This time, Jace was ready. He dodged the attack, narrowly missing the sharp end of the weapon, and countered with a quick thrust of his sword. The blade grazed the champion's side, drawing a thin line of blood. The crowd gasped, their disbelief growing with every passing moment. Princess Rilla's expression faltered, her confidence shaken for the first time. She hadn't expected this. Humans were supposed to be weak. Humans were supposed to fall to their knees before the might of her people. Yet here he was, still standing, still fighting, and now drawing blood. The princess clenched her jaw, her eyes narrowing. She hated this feeling. She hated the idea that this mere human might just be capable of doing something her people couldn't. This was a challenge to everything she had believed about humans, and deep down, despite herself, she was starting to feel a twinge of respect. The fight had reached its peak, and the tension in the arena was unbearable. Jace could feel every muscle in his body screaming for rest, but he refused to stop. His breath came in ragged gasps. His sword felt heavier with every swing, but his resolve remained unbroken. He couldn't afford to lose. Not now, not in front of the entire galaxy, not in front of Princess Rilla. His alien opponent, the champion, was beginning to show signs of wear. His heavy armor, though strong, was starting to slow him down. The alien's breath came more quickly, his movements less fluid. Jace saw this, and his mind sharpened. He had to strike now. This was his chance. But he knew he had to do something different, something unexpected. Jace's eyes flicked upward toward the princess. She was still seated on her high throne, her eyes narrowed with disbelief. She had mocked him at every turn. But now she was silent, watching him closely. Her arrogance was starting to falter, but Jace could see the doubt in her eyes. She had underestimated him, just as he had expected. With a deep breath, Jace made his decision. He couldn't win this fight by outmuscling the alien champion. He didn't have the strength, and he didn't have the armor to protect him. But what he had was his mind. The humans had always been known for their ability to adapt, to think quickly, and to turn the tide of battle when all seemed lost. Without warning, Jace dropped his sword to the ground. The crowd gasped, unsure of what to make of this sudden move. The alien champion looked confused, as if unsure whether to attack or hold back. But Jace wasn't done. He stood there, chest heaving with exhaustion, and slowly began to remove his armor. Princess Rilla's eyes widened in surprise. What was he doing? Was he giving up? Was he surrendering? But Jace wasn't surrendering. He was stripping away the very thing the princess had mocked. The armor wasn't what made him a warrior. It was his spirit, his determination, his ability to fight with everything he had, even when the odds were stacked against him. As the last piece of armor clattered to the ground, Jace stood before his opponent, completely exposed. His body was lean, covered in bruises and sweat, but his eyes burned with defiance. The arena fell silent. Even the alien champion seemed momentarily stunned by the sight. Jace, a human, stood bare before him. No armor to protect him, no weapons to defend himself. Just a man, standing tall against an alien race that had mocked his kind for centuries. Jace turned his gaze to the princess, his eyes meeting hers across the arena. For the first time, he saw a flicker of something in her expression. It wasn't contempt or laughter anymore. It was something else, something he hadn't expected. The princess leaned forward in her seat, her hand gripping the armrest tightly. She had seen many warriors in her time, many champions from countless worlds, but she had never seen anything like this human. He wasn't giving up. He wasn't afraid. And for a moment, just a moment, she wasn't sure whether it was her champion who was going to win this fight, or the human. Jace's heart raced, but he kept his focus. This was his moment, and he wouldn't waste it. No matter what the princess thought, no matter how the crowd reacted, he was going to win this fight. And when he did, it would be the human spirit that triumphed. Not alien technology, not strength, but something far more powerful. The alien champion raised his weapon, but for the first time, Jace wasn't afraid. He had nothing left to lose. He had already won. The arena was silent as Jace stood before his opponent, unarmed and unprotected. Every eye in the crowd was locked on him, but it wasn't the alien champion they were watching anymore. It was Jace, the human who had shed his armor to face the impossible. The alien champion paused, unsure of what to do next. The once laughing crowd was now eerily quiet, their murmurs filling the air like a strange, tense hum. Princess Rila, high above them on her throne, couldn't tear her eyes away from the human below. Her mind was spinning. She had seen many battles in her life, watched countless alien champions win with ease, but never had she seen anyone do this. Never had she seen someone expose their vulnerability so openly. The human had no armor, no weapon, and yet he didn't seem afraid. He stood tall, as if daring the universe to bring its worst. The princess leaned forward, her expression now a mixture of surprise and curiosity. She had mocked him before, called him weak, but now she wasn't so sure. Her heart, ever so proud and confident, felt a strange flicker, an emotion she had not expected to feel toward this human. Respect. Jace caught her gaze, his eyes unwavering. He didn't need to speak. His actions had already said everything. He wasn't here to prove anything to her. He was here to prove something to himself. He wasn't afraid of failing. He had nothing left to lose. The alien champion, still holding his massive spear, seemed unsure. His confidence was fading. He had expected an easy victory. He had expected the human to falter, to break under the pressure. But instead, he was faced with a human who refused to be defeated. The champion swung his spear, trying to land a decisive blow, but Jace was already moving, dodging with the kind of agility that had been keeping him alive throughout the duel. Jace's movements were fluid and quick, his body reacting faster than the alien could anticipate. The alien champion swung again, but this time Jace ducked low, dodging the strike with such precision that the tip of the spear barely missed him. He could feel the heat from the weapon as it passed inches above his head, but he didn't flinch. The crowd watched in awe, unable to believe that a human could be so swift, so sure of himself in the face of such a powerful foe. The princess watched closely, her eyes narrowing as she analyzed the fight. It was clear now. Jace wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting to win. The human was using his wit, his agility, and his determination to outlast the alien champion. And he was doing it in a way that no one, least of all her, had expected. As Jace continued to dodge and weave around the alien's attacks, Princess Rila couldn't help but feel a growing sense of admiration. She had underestimated him. No, worse, she had thought of him as nothing more than a weakling. But now, standing there, stripped of his armor and with nothing left to shield him, he had become something far more impressive in her eyes. He had become a symbol of the resilience and strength that humans possessed. The alien champion, frustrated by his inability to land a blow, stepped back for a moment, clearly winded. He hadn't expected this fight to last this long. But Jace wasn't just surviving anymore. He was making the alien warrior look clumsy and slow. The tables were turning, and the princess was starting to see the full scope of what humans were capable of. And in that moment, she realized something else. Jace wasn't just fighting for his life. He was fighting for humanity's place in the galaxy. He was proving, in a way no one had ever expected, that humans were far more than they appeared. The arena had gone quiet again, the tension thick in the air. Every eye was on Jace as he moved with grace and precision, dodging the alien champion's every strike. It was clear to anyone watching that the fight had changed. No longer was this a contest of strength alone. This was a battle of wills, and Jace was determined to win. The alien champion, once so confident, was now showing signs of exhaustion. Sweat dripped from his brow, his heavy breathing echoing through the arena. He had underestimated the human, thinking his strength alone would be enough to crush him. But Jace wasn't just fighting with his body. He was fighting with his mind, with every ounce of energy he had left, and with a fierce, unyielding determination. Jace knew his body wouldn't last much longer. His muscles ached, and every step he took felt heavier than the last. But he kept moving, his eyes focused on his opponent, his movements sharp and calculated. He had faced tougher odds in his life, but there was something about this fight that felt different. This wasn't just about survival. It was about showing the galaxy what humans were made of. The alien champion swung his spear again, the weapon humming with deadly energy. But Jace was ready. He dropped to the ground, rolling under the strike, his movements smooth and practiced. As the alien champion staggered forward, off balance from his missed attack, Jace seized the moment. He launched himself forward, using the last of his strength to land a powerful kick to the champion's side. The blow was enough to send the alien stumbling backward, his spear falling from his hands. The crowd gasped, a wave of shock rippling through the spectators. The alien champion had lost his weapon, and for the first time in the battle, he looked vulnerable. Princess Rilla sat forward in her seat, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had never expected this. Jace, the human, was outwitting her champion. He wasn't just surviving. He was outplaying the alien's superior strength with his skill and determination. The princess could feel her pride beginning to slip. She had always believed her people were the strongest in the galaxy, but this human was proving her wrong. The alien champion, now unarmed, tried to recover, but Jace wasn't done yet. He knew this was his moment. His mind raced as he scanned his surroundings, looking for anything that could help him finish this fight. His gaze landed on the fallen spear. The champion's weapon was still glowing with energy, lying just a few feet away. Jace moved quickly, grabbing the spear and twirling it in his hands. It wasn't as heavy as the alien's version, but it would do. With a swift, practiced motion, Jace took aim and lunged. The alien champion barely had time to react before the spear's energy blast hit him square in the chest. He staggered, his breath coming in short gasps, and collapsed to the ground, unable to continue. The arena was silent, the crowd stunned into disbelief. Jace stood over the fallen champion, his chest heaving with exhaustion, but his eyes shining with victory. He had done it. He had beaten an opponent far stronger, far more powerful, and he had done it with human ingenuity and resilience. Princess Rilla's mouth hung open in shock. She could hardly believe what she had just witnessed. Her champion, the one she had so confidently believed would win, was defeated by a mere human. It wasn't just a defeat, it was a statement. Humans were not to be underestimated. Jace's eyes met hers across the arena. There was no boastfulness in his gaze, no smugness. There was only quiet satisfaction. He hadn't just won the battle. He had earned her respect, whether she was ready to admit it or not. The silence in the arena was deafening. The alien champion, once full of strength and arrogance, now lay defeated at Jace's feet. The human stood tall, breathing heavily but with pride shining in his eyes. His armor lay in pieces on the ground, discarded in a symbolic act of vulnerability. Yet despite being unprotected, Jace had defeated an alien warrior much stronger than himself. The crowd, once skeptical, was now filled with murmurs of disbelief and awe. Princess Rila remained seated on her throne, her eyes fixed on Jace. Her heart raced as she processed what had just happened. She had watched the entire battle unfold, certain that her champion would crush the human within moments. But now, with her champion lying defeated, Rila could only feel a strange sense of respect creeping into her chest. She had never imagined that a human could achieve such a victory. Her mind raced. Her people, the advanced alien race she was born into, had always considered themselves the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Their technology, their strength, their intelligence, they had always been above the lesser species, and they had always ruled with ease. To her, humans had been no different from any other primitive species, weak, fragile, and easily defeated. But Jace had just shattered that belief with every move he made. The princess's fingers tightened around the armrest of her throne. She had expected a short, decisive victory to prove her race's superiority. Instead, she had witnessed something extraordinary. Jace wasn't the strongest. He didn't have the advanced technology or the imposing size that her people possessed. But he had something that was far more valuable: determination, resilience, and an unwavering belief in himself. It was something that could not be measured by strength or technology. As Jace stood over the defeated champion, his chest rising and falling with every breath, Rila felt a sense of admiration for the first time. She could no longer deny it. This human had earned her respect. He had proven that the heart, the will to fight, could overcome anything. She had seen the human spirit in action, and it had made her rethink everything she had ever known. Jace's gaze shifted to Rila, their eyes locking across the arena. For a moment, the noise of the crowd seemed to fade away, and all that remained was the intense look between them. The princess's mouth was dry, her mind still struggling to comprehend what had just occurred. She had underestimated Jace, and in doing so, she had underestimated humans as a whole. Now she found herself questioning everything she had ever believed. Rila's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. The idea that a human could be so powerful, so capable, was too much to process in that moment. Her arrogance, her pride, had blinded her to the truth, and now she had no choice but to accept it. The crowd began to cheer, slowly at first, as they realized what had happened. They had witnessed the impossible. The human had won, against all odds. The cheers grew louder, echoing through the arena. But Rila remained quiet, her thoughts still swirling. Jace turned toward her, not with smugness, but with quiet dignity. He hadn't fought for her respect. He had fought to prove something to himself and his people. But now, standing victorious, he had done more than that. He had changed her perception of humanity. The princess finally spoke, her voice softer than anyone had ever heard it before. You are unlike any human I have ever seen." Jace didn't answer immediately. He simply nodded, knowing that he had already made his point. His fight wasn't just against the alien champion. It had been against the very idea that humans were inferior. And in doing so, he had shattered that belief, not just for the princess, but for everyone watching. The sound of the cheering crowd filled the arena, but Jace's focus remained on Princess Rila. She was no longer the arrogant, untouchable figure she had been when the fight started. Now she was watching him with new eyes filled with respect, perhaps even awe. Jace couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction deep within, but it wasn't about the victory. It was about what he had proven, not just to the princess, but to the entire galaxy. The alien champion, still lying on the ground, groaned in defeat. The crowd was still buzzing with disbelief at the unexpected outcome. No one had thought the human would win. No one had thought he even stood a chance. And yet, here he was, standing tall and undefeated, while the mightiest of the alien warriors lay at his feet. Jace took a slow step forward, feeling every bruise and ache in his body. His legs were shaky, but he held himself steady. He wasn't done yet. His mission was complete, but this moment was about more than just winning a fight. It was about showing the galaxy that humans weren't to be underestimated. The princess slowly rose from her throne. The whispers around her were growing louder, but she remained silent. Her mind was still working through everything she had just witnessed. She had seen warriors from every corner of the galaxy. Some were stronger, some faster, some smarter. But never had she seen someone like Jace. He had fought not just with his body, but with his heart. He had fought for something more than a win. Jace finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "I didn't do this for glory. I did it to show that humans are just as strong, just as capable as anyone else." Princess Rilla's eyes softened as she regarded him. She hadn't expected those words. Humans were never supposed to be this powerful. They were supposed to be the weaklings of the galaxy, the ones who were easily overrun, crushed by the might of alien civilizations. But Jace had proven otherwise. The arena was still loud with cheers, but a quiet understanding seemed to settle between Jace and Rilla. This wasn't just a fight between a human and an alien. It was a fight for respect. And Jace had earned it. Rilla took a few steps forward, her regal demeanor still intact, but without the usual arrogance. "You've proven your point, human," she said, her voice steady but with an edge of admiration. "You've shown us something we never thought we'd see. And for that, you have earned more than just my respect. You've earned your place among us." Jace's eyes met hers, and for the first time in this entire duel, there was no animosity between them. There was only a quiet understanding. He hadn't won by defeating an alien champion with brute force. He had won by refusing to give up, by showing that the human spirit could not be broken, no matter the odds. Rilla continued, her gaze unwavering. "This won't be forgotten. Your victory will echo through the galaxy, and humans will no longer be seen as weaklings. You've changed everything." Jace nodded slowly. He wasn't interested in changing the galaxy. He wasn't interested in fame or glory. But he knew that this was something much more important. This was a statement to the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and that alone would change the way humans were viewed forever. As the arena's cheers reached a deafening roar, Jace stood quietly, his eyes meeting Rilla's once more. The battle had ended, but a new chapter for humanity had just begun. The cheers from the arena slowly began to fade, and the energy in the air shifted. Jace stood alone, his chest still rising and falling with each labored breath, but his mind was calm. The fight was over, and he had won. Not just the duel, but something far more valuable: respect. Respect from the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and that more than any trophy was what mattered. Princess Rilla's eyes were fixed on him. She hadn't taken her gaze off him since the final blow was struck. Her usual composure had faltered, and now there was no longer an ounce of arrogance in her demeanor. Instead, there was something unexpected, a deep, quiet admiration. For the first time, Jace saw her not as a princess above him, but as someone who had been humbled, who had learned something new. Rilla descended from her throne slowly, her movements graceful, but there was a shift in her posture. She no longer stood as a ruler looking down on her subjects. Now, she moved like someone who was about to address an equal. Her voice, when it came, was steady but different. There was no trace of mockery in her words, no trace of the pride that had once defined her. "You've done more than just defeat my champion," she said, her tone both soft and serious. "You've proven that humans are not to be underestimated. I have watched warriors from all over the galaxy fight, but none with the strength you've shown. Your spirit, your resolve. It's something we've overlooked for far too long." Jace, though tired and bruised, stood tall. He wasn't sure what to say, but he didn't need to speak. His actions had already said enough. But the silence between them seemed to stretch, as if Rilla was waiting for something more. The princess stepped closer, her eyes never leaving Jace's. "Because of what you've shown today, I want to offer you something." She paused, as if considering her next words carefully. "An alliance. An opportunity to be more than just a warrior. I offer you a place in my court, a voice in our decisions. Your people, your kind, they will no longer be seen as weak. They will have a seat at the table. Jace's mind raced as the words sunk in. An offer like that was rare, especially for a human. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. He had come to this alien world with one goal in mind: to show them that humanity was not to be dismissed. He had done that. But now, the opportunity to step into something greater was on the table. He looked at Princess Rila, her face serious but not cold. She wasn't offering this out of pity. She was offering it because she had seen something in him, in humans, that she hadn't seen before. I don't fight for power, Princess, Jace said, his voice steady. I fight for respect. My people deserve to be seen as equals, not as tools to be used. But if you want to stand beside us, to help us prove ourselves to the galaxy, then I'll accept. Rila's expression softened, and for the first time, Jace saw a small smile flicker at the edges of her lips. You will not regret this, human, she said quietly. I promise you that. The crowd's cheers began to grow again, louder this time. They had witnessed the beginning of something new, something that would change the galaxy forever. And as Jace stood there, side by side with Princess Rila, he knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. The arena was filled with noise, the crowd's cheers echoing through the air, but Jace's mind was quiet. He stood there, beside Princess Rila, feeling the weight of what had just happened. He had come to this strange world to prove a point, to show the galaxy that humans were capable of more than just survival. He had done that and more. He had earned the respect of an alien princess and, by extension, the respect of an entire empire. As the cheers continued to rise, Rilla's voice broke through the noise. This victory isn't just yours, human, she said, her eyes meeting his. It belongs to all your people. You've shown us that humans are not weak. We've been blind to your potential. But that changes now. Jace nodded, his exhaustion still weighing on him, but there was a sense of satisfaction in his heart. The fight had been brutal, but it had been worth it. He had done more than win a battle. He had changed something deep within the princess, within her empire. For the first time, humans weren't seen as inferior. They weren't seen as a lesser species, but as equals. I didn't do it for recognition, Jace replied, his voice steady. I did it for the future of my people. We've always had the strength to survive, but now we can show the galaxy what we're really capable of. Rila smiled, a genuine smile this time, one that wasn't laced with arrogance or superiority. I see that now, she said, and I'll make sure the rest of the galaxy sees it too. I've already begun talks with other worlds. Your victory today will be the spark that changes everything. You've earned a place here, not just in my court, but in the future of this empire. Jace didn't know what to say to that. The weight of the offer, the responsibility that came with it, was a lot to process. He had never thought about becoming part of an empire, especially not one as vast and powerful as Rilla's. But the idea of working alongside her, of helping guide humanity toward equality, was something he couldn't ignore. I'm not here for power, Princess, Jace said, his eyes focused on her. I'm here because my people deserve to be treated fairly. I'm here because we deserve a future. Princess Rila nodded in understanding. And that is why I'm asking you to stay, to help us change the way the galaxy sees humans. We can't do it alone. Your people have proven themselves. And now, we'll stand with you. The weight of her words settled in Jace's chest. He didn't need power or riches. What he needed was for humanity to stand tall, to be seen as equals in a universe full of powerful civilizations. And now, it seemed like that dream was within reach. As the crowd continued to cheer, Rila turned to face them, raising her hand for silence. The noise died down quickly, and all eyes were on her. Today, a new chapter begins, she announced, her voice echoing throughout the arena. Today, we welcome humanity as equals. Today, we forge an alliance that will change the galaxy forever. The roar of the crowd was deafening now. But Jace barely noticed. He was lost in the moment, in the realization that humanity had come so far. And in that moment, he knew that their future was bright, not because of the strength of one man, but because of the spirit that lived in every human. Princess Rilla turned back to him, offering her hand. Jace took it, and for the first time, he felt the weight of his actions. He had proven humanity's worth. And now, the real work was about to begin.